directional felling. And we have this evening as our presenter, we have Bill Worrell. He's our Virginia Cooperative Extension Forester that covers the Southwest District, covers quite a few counties. He's based in Lebanon, but covers quite a few counties in Southwest Virginia, does the Sharp Logger program, which is equivalent to the Master Logger program that is in Kentucky. So, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm sure he'll be able to answer some questions as well at the end of this. So, thank you, Bill.
Okay, yeah, we're going to show a video clip. It's basically a PowerPoint with a voiceover, and there's a few video clips in it. And when we get to the end, we'll take some questions and take some questions and try to answer them the best we can. I'll try to get this here started, and I'll see if I can expand it to be full screen. Does anyone need closed captioning? I can click on that if we need to. Okay. Now we'll go ahead and get started here.
Welcome to Basic Chainsaw Safety and Directional Felling. This course is brought to you with assistance from Forestry Mutual Insurance Company. This course is designed for loggers, forest landowners, and others interested in learning the basics of chainsaw safety and directional felling. There will be a series of questions throughout this program. In order to complete the training, you must answer each of the questions. If you answer a quiz question incorrectly, you will get further chances to answer until you choose the correct option and are allowed to move on. Once you complete the program, you will be able to navigate back and forth to any slides that you would like to view again. So if you want to go back and view something that you didn't catch the first time, wait until the program has completed. Then you'll be able to navigate back to earlier portions of the training. You may also pause the program using the pause button on the bottom left of your screen. At the conclusion of the training, there will be instructions for how to submit for Sharp Logger credits or to document your participation for other continuing education programs. Just click the appropriate link at the end. This online training is intended to be an introduction to the basic principles of safely using a chainsaw and felling trees. This training will cover why we train, personal protective equipment, safety features of the chainsaw, safely starting a chainsaw, reactionary forces you need to be aware of when operating a chainsaw, developing a safe felling plan, and properly notching and felling a tree. The forest industry is a fast-paced and exciting business. Over the years, timber harvesting has become safer due to increased use of mechanized felling. While there are many logging operations still primarily utilizing manual felling with a chainsaw, on mechanized logging operations, mechanical felling, limbing, and bucking have greatly reduced the risk of injury. While modern logging equipment can reduce much of the manual felling risk, mechanized equipment can have its limitations. When mechanized forest harvesting equipment use is limited, the chainsaw is still frequently used for felling trees. Equipment limiting factors can include steep terrain, trees that are too large for the equipment to fell, or environmental regulations limiting the use of equipment near sensitive areas. Over the years, the chainsaw or power saw has been the workhorse in the logging woods. A skilled, trained, and educated timber cutter is a very effective and efficient tool when called upon. However, for the untrained employee, the chainsaw can be an instrument of injury or death. This presentation, while being introductory in nature, will focus on reducing risks associated with the chainsaw and its use. The risks from chainsaw use in manual felling operations come in many forms. Loggers work in a very unforgiving environment. Exposure to risks such as overhead hazards, tensioned wood, and the chainsaw itself make the logging industry one of the most dangerous in the nation. There is generally no such thing as a little logging accident. Logging injuries are usually serious in nature and oftentimes catastrophic. Training and education are the tools used to manage elevated risk levels. One key to training is to get employees to make good decisions.
Where did he go? All right, what's he doing? Did he quit on your end? Phil?
It's seems frozen up.
Okay, that's what I thought. I don't know. This thing worked fine earlier. I watched it earlier today and it went fine. So what did it do? Let me try that one more time. It worked earlier. what it's doing, Phil. It's now acting like it don't want to do anything.
Hey, Bill, it may be the Sharp Logger site because I just tried to log into it and it wouldn't load.
It's
So it
just
may
sitting
be.
there. It's sitting there and spinning. I didn't think to check and see if if they were doing any maintenance on their servers after hours today. That would be my luck. Yeah, that for some reason that website's just not doing anything at the moment.
Yes, I don't think it's on your end. It seems to be just that particular website is frozen up. It may correct itself here in a bit.
Yeah, it looks like this. It looks like that website is not doing anything. Okay, Phil, I don't. I don't have a good backup plan. I was trying to. I don't.
Okay. Yeah,
The
you don't have a chainsaw and a few trees there in front of you. You could.
I've got one blowed over that needs to be cut out, but no, I don't have it. I don't have it gassed up out by the tree, ready to go. I was looking to see. I've not had it, so I didn't really have a backup plan in case the website crashed.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought about the site crashing, but you know, we can punt and do it another time. Would you mind kind of talking about the Sharp Logger program? And I don't know, I'm actually more familiar with the Master Logger program that we had in Kentucky. I've been curious about. I'm sure they're pretty similar. You mind just kind of talking about that for just a minute?
Yeah, they would actually. Yeah, hold on here. I could. I went cutting everything off to see if it would help, but the the logger program would be very similar to the Kentucky program with the Sustainable Forestry Initiative that was developed and created in 1995 and implemented in 1996 that basically required each state to come up with a logger training program to meet the requirements of the Sustainable Forestry Initiative. And most of the major pulp and paper and plywood companies and the huge forest products manufacturing companies signed on and agreed to adhere to the Sustainable Forestry Initiative guidelines. So with that started basically in late 95 and early 96, that meant that logger training programs had to be developed. There had been some training prior to that, but this kind of streamlined a training program that would meet the Sustainable Forestry Initiative guidelines. And with that, each state kind of developed their own training program to meet the needs of the SFI program. So, Virginia's program, they called it the Sharp Logger Program, and that's an acronym that stands for Sustainable Harvesting and Resource Professional. The program was to provide training to help the loggers be safer in the woods, be safer on themselves and their people and the environment as well, but also to make them more efficient and help teach them some efficiency and production things that can help their businesses grow and thrive, as well as teach them some environmental concerns, teach them some very basic forest management stuff. So they have an understanding of why we do some types of harvesting and do other types of harvesting based on the variety of the trees we've got in our natural native hardwood forest. We've got such a diversity of tree species. Some of them regenerate and grow in the shade. Some of them will not regenerate and grow in the shade. They need full sunlight. So we've got a variety of hardwood species that need a little bit of different management techniques to help some of those species thrive. And another aspect of the training program is water quality protection and best management practices for logging, and that gets into erosion and sediment control. The BMPs are designed to try to prevent any type of erosion from reaching the stream and becoming sediment. So one of the main BMP recommendations is a buffer along any streams and rivers and creeks and anything that has running water. It's recommended a buffer be placed on that and try to minimize any type of equipment getting in that area and across the streams as little and as infrequently as you can get by with. So that's the basis of the logger training program. And actually the Kentucky program and the Virginia program have reciprocal agreements. So if a Kentucky resident who's a logger has a master, the Kentucky Master Logger certification, if they move to Virginia and want to get the training program in Virginia, they can do so. The other big difference is Kentucky has it's basically law. There's regulatory things behind it. So to be a logger in the state of Kentucky, you have to be a Kentucky Master Logger. And in Virginia, it's not a law. There's no state code or legal requirement to have the Sharp Logger training program to operate and be a logger. However, there are some market advantages and opportunities for having the Sharp Logger training program because the majority of the major pulp and paper companies and the big companies will only do business with loggers who've been through the training program and maintain the training program. So while it's not mandatory in Virginia that the loggers have it, in order to be able to sell and market material into all of the markets, they need to have it. So, and of course, many of the loggers who contract, who cut timber that the sawmill or the paper mill has bought in contracting for that company may require that they have the training program. So that's a very short and sweet overview of the training program. Let's see if the web page is back up and going. I don't think it is. Anyone have any other questions about the training program right offhand?
I had another question, not directly related to Sharp Logger, but given the folks that we have here, we've got some mix of Virginia and Kentucky folks. a couple master naturalists, a couple master gardeners, and your trees to products tour. Is that something that you think is it too early to say if you're going to have that this year, or?
I would like to be able to say we could have it. I don't know yet. Yeah, it's still real early to tell if I can have it. It probably can safely say I might have trouble having it the way we normally would, which means, I normally have some vans, and we put people in vans and we drive from location to location based on the current COVID protocols and safety concerns. I don't know that I'm going to be able to put people in vans and drive them from location to location. So the challenge I could have is developing a program where people could drive to some of the tour locations on their own. So I hope to be able to have that program, but it's probably going to look a little bit different, and the logistics of it will be a little bit different than in times past, because I don't know that they're going to allow me to drive people around in vans.
Right. Okay.
There are some segments, there are some days of that event. It's basically a Thursday afternoon, Thursday night, all day, or Monday afternoon, Monday night, all day Tuesday, Wednesday, and half a day on Thursday. And all day Tuesday, we stay very local. So it's possible I can put that together and have some portions of that program this year, but I don't know that it probably wouldn't look and function the way it has for the last several years. I hope to be able to carry it out. It's what I hope to be able to do. So I'll definitely let you know in the event you have some folks that would be interested in participating.
Okay.
Also trying to scramble here and see what I can find on the Sustainable Forestry Initiative website and see if I can. I ought to be able to pull. Let's see, I had something here on my computer I probably don't need anymore, but I actually have a video that we created back. It's dated quite a bit. If you want me to show you the video, let me see if I can see how long it is. It's about 15 minutes. Would you be up for watching that video on the Sustainable Forestry Initiative?
Yeah, I think so.
Give me a minute here to figure out how to manipulate my computer screen again. And I will acknowledge this is quite dated. I think we created this video in like 1996. A few of the standards have been updated, but this is what was created when the Sustainable Forestry Program was implemented and started back in 1995. And we essentially implemented it in 96. And the first logger training programs happened in 1996. First one in Southwest Virginia I helped conduct when I was working on the industry side of things down in Duffield. And this video was created by the American Forest and Paper Association. Actually, part of it was filmed in Appalachia, Virginia, and some of it was filmed in Washington County, Virginia. And then there's obviously some scenes and some of it that was created in the Lake States, up north, and a couple other areas of our country. So if I go back to figure out how I can share. See if I can figure this out. We'll start it, okay?
America's privately owned forests stand today as a tribute to our national character and way of life. These are the woodlands owned by Americans, by individuals and companies who manage the forest for the benefit of all. How well they are doing that job is what this story is all about. As a journalist, I've covered events and issues all over the world that affect people and the environment. And what I often find is that competition does exist between economic and environmental concerns. Unchecked, that competition turns into conflict, which, of course, makes news and captures our attention. But this is not a story about conflict. It's a story about balance. It's a positive story about the sustainability of our forest resources and how America's forest industry is working today to continually improve forest practices. Across the country, foresters, landowners, loggers, and leaders from the forest industry and the conservation community have committed themselves to a bold new approach to good stewardship of the land. The effort is called SFI, the Sustainable Forestry Initiative. What does SFI mean? America's private forests are being managed to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs.
We've been very pleased with some of the early progress from SFI. What's exciting to me is to see not just the rhetoric, but on-the-ground application of principles and practices. And so I think we're in for a new agenda into the 21st century that we will look back upon this time as a founding era for this new effort in sustainable practices.
SFI sets forth 12 guidelines for managing forest lands. Among them are fostering sustainable forestry on all forest lands, ensuring prompt reforestation, protecting water quality, providing opportunities for public outreach, enhancing wildlife habitat, contributing to biodiversity, minimizing the visual impact of harvesting, and reporting industry progress to the public on a regular basis. Overall, the SFI guidelines promote both environmentally and economically sound practices. Greg Hudson is a forester for the B.A. Mulliken Lumber and Manufacturing Company, which grows and produces furniture-grade hardwoods from the rugged hills of southwest Virginia and Tennessee.
We're not an extremely large lumber company. We own probably 30,000 acres. If we cut all the timber on that 30,000 acres, we'd only probably run our sawmills for less than a year. So we depend on working with private landowners.
Of course, I don't know if you've been up there since we've completed this road.
Yes, I've been in, and I've been very pleased with what we've seen so far.
Private landowners, like Lewis Upchurch, own some 288 million acres of timberland, which is 59% of America's forest resource base. What they do on their land is vitally important to forest sustainability.
SFI represents principles and goals that any conscientious landowner should adopt.
The Upchurch property has abundant timber. It's also part of a sensitive watershed area. Mulliken forester Terry Porter.
Lewis Upchurch is typical of the landowner we work with, and his interest was to try to get some revenue, but also to regenerate the stand. Basically, we referred to the principles that we follow and believe in and contained in the Sustainable Forestry Initiative that deal with water quality and wildlife habitat and aesthetics. The SMZs kept the stream management zones in mind, and the skid roads and their slopes and their approaches, so that we didn't get anything feeding down into this stream.
Well, the proof of that is in the water quality that's running by us right now. It's beautiful.
Mulliken is one of hundreds of companies that are breaking new ground under SFI, which is coordinated by the American Forest and Paper Association, the industry's national trade organization. Mary Worth is responsible for her company's communications and outreach effort under SFI guidelines.
We've got our forester and we've got our logger, and now we need our forest. We feel very strongly that the future generations need to understand what forestry is about. You can see now that the canopy is almost complete. The reason I like SFI so much is because I think it does articulate what we do as an industry, not just the harvesting of trees, which we get a lot of credit for, but the other activities that we do, the decisions that are made before trees ever harvested, such as water quality issues, insect and disease control, fire control, the dollars that we put into research. And I think the SFI, to me, is so attractive is because it's solution-oriented. It's very easy to sit back and criticize and say you shouldn't cut trees down, but it's much harder to come up with practical solutions.
Geographically, the hardwood stands of the Appalachian Mountains are surrounded by the nation's most productive forest region. In the South, pine forests produce more revenue than any other single crop. This is a tree farm in rural Virginia, not far from where America's forest industry first began back in colonial times. But today, we still depend on the forest for our wood and paper products. As a matter of fact, every year, each one of us Americans uses the equivalent of a 100-foot tree, 18 inches in diameter. Forest sustainability, SFI, is critical here in the South and throughout the country. In the Great Lakes region, the value of the forests far exceeds their economic potential. It's a place for recreation, for wildlife habitat, and biodiversity. It's also the focus of serious academic study. Dr. Bob Stein of the University of Minnesota.
My sense is that the idea of sustainability is indeed something that's credible from a scientific standpoint. I think SFI is a very important program that industry has undertaken on their own. I think it shows their commitment to sustainable forestry. The very industry livelihood depends on having sustainable forests.
Implementing SFI in this environment requires special equipment. The extra wide tracks give this vehicle a soft footprint, about the same weight per square inch as a man walking over the same ground. Kent Jacobson of the Potlatch Corporation.
In Minnesota, we've got about 30% wetlands up here. And the wetlands can obviously be real sensitive to soil compactions, erosion, rutting, a lot of soil damage. So we really take advantage of the cool winter months up here to allow us to access and to harvest a lot of our sites with minimizing the impacts and fulfilling a lot of the SFI objectives.
Training and education for loggers and foresters is a key component of SFI, ensuring that all forest land owned by member companies and individuals is managed sustainably.
The reserve area there is flagged in pink.
Foresters and loggers work together to implement SFI. Logging contractor Larry Agurkis.
Our machinery has changed. We're running wide tires. It helps considerable. There's a lot of added costs, but if that's what we have to do, that's what we're going to do to get the job done. And we can do a better job than we're doing today.
The practice of integrated resource management, blending timber production with wildlife habitat, is a key component of SFI.
Looks good, Greg. I think we left quite a bit of the wildlife reserve trees. You took advantage of what the site had to offer. You got some irregular edges. You left.
Potlatch wildlife biologist Mike Hauser on the site of a recent harvest.
From a biological standpoint, it's a lot different than what you would see as a person just driving off the street and looking at it. For example, the snag back here, the dead tree, is called a wildlife reserve tree or a snag. Because it is dead, it'll provide insect habitat, and birds that like to eat insects. We have some other inclusions of older aspen, for example, in the background here, that will provide some structural diversity in this stand as the younger aspen grows up.
Charles Wolfe works as an emergency room surgeon, but his passion is training bird dogs in the woods and fields that surround his family's home. A team from Potlatch helps him manage the land for timber production and wildlife habitat.
When we first started, I'll be honest, we were probably a little skeptical about dealing with a large corporation such as Potlatch. But then once we met with Greg and Mike, they listened to exactly what we wanted. Their ideas were completely congruent with our own. If they went above and beyond and gave us new ideas, which we were really pleased with.
Industry leaders are committed to SFI as a framework for coordinating their efforts nationwide. In California, Sierra Pacific Industries Director Mark Emerson.
I think that being an owner of an asset like this, you have significant social responsibilities. but they're going to be up on the ridge, away from the road. There's partial cutting in between.
Research and improved technology, such as satellite mapping, ensures that companies have better tools to make management decisions. Sierra Pacific Forester Tom Nelson.
Well, sustainability is not just for timber growth. And I think that's one thing that the SFI acknowledges, is that forestry is more than simply growing wood. We need to be looking at the sustainability of other resources that we have a direct effect on.
Over the past decade, AF&PA member companies have spent more than $100 million on wildlife research. SFI is a natural extension of this commitment.
I think the most important thing that we go through as foresters is making those decisions that have long-term ramifications. This plantation, when it was planted, we put a mixture of species in. We put Douglas fir, ponderosa pine, and then we get some natural seeding coming with incense cedar and white fir in the understory. So by having that variety, that diversity, it allows more wildlife to be using all our plantations.
SFI guidelines set concrete performance measures for member companies. The average harvest area must be kept within defined limits. Reforestation is done promptly, 2 years for replanting and 5 years for natural regeneration. At Sierra Pacific Industries, Randy McDaniels.
From a biological standpoint, what we're going to get here is trees that are growing much better than the ones that were here before, okay? When the public looks at something like this, they look at these things as a final harvest that maybe nothing will ever grow here again. But that is as far from the truth as you can get. My job is to come in behind the forester like this, figure out what needs to be done, and get the site producing to its potential.
SFI is a new way of doing business. Under SFI, AF&PA member companies, which own about 90% of the industrial timberland in the United States, have agreed to a review of their performance by an independent panel of experts, including conservationists and scientists. And each year, AF&PA makes a report to the public as to how the industry is doing. Here's AF&PA President Henson Moore.
What's unique is it's the first time that an industry in the United States, or pretty much anywhere else in the world, they've all gotten together and agreed on certain levels or certain standards of operation by which they're going to live by, and to make it mandatory and to have teeth in it. If you don't live up to it, we kick you out of the organization. You can't be a part of it. And if you follow it, you're really going to have to spend money, time, and effort to change your way of doing business.
I think the environmental movement is moving from an era of confrontation into an era of collaboration, and I think that's best represented by partnerships. Communities are dependent on forest resources for economic return, for jobs, for livelihoods, and what you're seeing today is environmental groups reaching out and trying to work with on-the-ground demonstration projects in the form of partnerships. I believe it represents the wave of the future. As we meet economic growth needs in this country, and as at the same time meet our environmental needs, partnerships are the wave of the future.
I don't think the American people want conflict or like conflict. Whether it's in politics or whether it's in business or whether it's the environment, the American people expect people to get together and work out the problem. And so basically that's what this partnership is doing. It's people who are conservationists, environmentalists, working with us and helping us to see things we ought to be doing, and then working with us to help set those standards and then tell the public whether we're meeting them or not.
SFI is about doing what's right and ethical in the forest. SFI is also about a bold public commitment to the idea that sound environmental policy and sound business practices go hand in hand. As a reporter, it seems to me that's what we've been striving to achieve in this country ever since the environmental movement began. After all, who has more at stake in healthy and productive forests than the industry whose very future depends on it? SFI is about continuous improvement to help ensure abundant forests for all of us, today and tomorrow.
Okay, Again, that video was dated just a little bit, but that was the video that was created to talk about the Sustainable Forestry Initiative when it actually was developed back in 1995 and it was kicked off and implemented in 1996. Now, I also tell you that 2 years later, the Sustainable Forestry Initiative became its own organization. So the Sustainable Forestry Initiative is its own standalone organization, and it actually does third-party auditing of the companies who adhere to those standards. And I'm not very familiar with their web page, but they've got a web page and a whole host of videos. That's probably enough talking about that. We'll get back to answering any questions anyone might have, and we can try to see if we can schedule a redo of that safety program since the logger training program web page wasn't cooperating tonight.
Anybody have any questions for Bill before we call it a night?
Jeremy and I wanted to know how much of that 100-foot, 18-inch diameter tree went to toilet paper.
I don't know. Actually, I'd have to do some digging. At one time, we had some extension publications that talked about the average wood usage and paper usage of people.
Was paper the bulk of the wood usage for most of the folks?
On a day-to-day basis, it probably is. I don't have a good enough feel for that to tell you right off the top of my head what the number one wood usage per person is. But I know, we use a lot of paper, toiletries and paper towels and napkins and that kind of thing. Wood is also used as the absorbent component in baby diapers and incontinence products. So I know they said a few years ago, I think it was 2015, they said the worldwide market for adult incontinence products overtook the sale of baby diapers. So those type of products are going to be needed into the future. And we do have a paper mill in Virginia, in Eastern Virginia, down in Southampton County, in the city of Franklin, that does make the component, the absorbent wood fiber component that goes into baby diapers, Pampers.
All right, anything else? Well, if not, Bill, I appreciate you joining us this evening. Sorry the technology worked against us, but we'll circle back around and try to get that scheduled again sometime in the near future.
Yeah, and remind me, we schedule it again, we'll have a backup plan where we can you and I can probably access that in another place and make sure that we have it where hopefully it wouldn't crash on us when we need to play it.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the effort anyway, and for we'll definitely get you back on. Folks, for those of you who can join us on Thursday evening, we have Dr. Brian Bond coming back again from Virginia Tech. He's going to be talking about do-it-yourself solar dry kilns, and so that should be an interesting one. If you know folks who have a portable sawmill, it's something you might want to point them to. Could be an interesting topic. So. Shad and Jeremy, do you all have anything to add before we close?
Bill, thanks so much. We appreciate you joining us and look forward to getting all the technical difficulties lined out and getting you back on.
Yeah. we'll give it another try another time.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Good deal.
All right. All right. You all have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you all.